People say scarecrows were built to keep birds away, especially crows. I don't believe that anymore. Birds aren't stupid. Crows are some of the smartest animals on Earth. They know a figure made of straw and wood doesn't breathe. They know it never will. So why does it stand there, motionless, watching? 2 years ago, a scarecrow in a cursed Nebraska cornfield stared directly at me. That's when I learned something I wish I never had. If something studies your face long enough, eventually, it learns how to wear it. It all started with my father's death. He died alone in our old farmhouse, surrounded by miles of corn. My mother had passed away when I was a kid, and after that, it was just him and the farm. When I left for college, everyone thought I was chasing a better future. The truth was much simpler. I just wanted to escape that place. There was something about the silence out there. It never felt empty. It felt like it was listening. The last time I saw my father, he looked exhausted. His hands shook constantly, and whenever he thought I wasn't paying attention, he'd stop talking and stare through the kitchen window into the corn. "Dad, what are you looking at?" He never looked at me. He simply whispered, "Nothing." Back then I believed him. Now I know better. Sometimes when people say they're looking at nothing, they're really looking at something they can't bring themselves to describe. After the funeral, I drove back to the farm. The plan was simple: clean the house, pack what mattered, sell the property, leave forever, 1 week. That was all I intended to stay. By the time I arrived, the sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon. The sky had turned dark purple, and the air felt strangely cold for late August. Not freezing, just wrong. The road to the farmhouse was surrounded by towering walls of corn. As I drove between them, dry stalks scraped against both sides of my truck. Soft, dry, whispering, almost like people were trying not to laugh. I rolled the windows up. It didn't help. The key was exactly where my father always left it, under the porch light. Inside, the house still smelled like him. Coffee, old newspapers, tobacco, dust. Nothing had changed. A dried coffee mug still sat on the counter, and a newspaper remained folded on the kitchen table. For a moment, it felt like he'd only stepped outside and would be back any minute. I carried my bags upstairs, then walked back onto the porch before the last bit of daylight disappeared. That's when I saw it. A scarecrow, standing alone in the middle of the field. I froze. It stood on a crooked wooden post, wearing a faded brown coat beneath a wide black hat, its arms stretched outward like someone nailed to a cross. There had never been a scarecrow in that field. Never. I grew up here. I knew every fence, every tree, every inch of that land, and I knew one more thing. My father hated scarecrows. "They don't scare birds," he'd always say. "They just make your field look like there's a dead body standing in it." So, who put this one there? That night I couldn't sleep. Old houses make noise, I knew that. Wood creaks, pipes groan, roofs settle. I'd heard those sounds my entire childhood. But sometime after midnight, I heard something different, rustling, moving through the corn, then silence. A few seconds later, it came again, closer, rustle, silence, rustle, silence. I sat up in bed. Every horror story I'd ever heard suddenly came rushing back. None of them had ever frightened me before. This one did. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and aimed it through the bedroom window. At first, nothing, only corn swaying in the wind. Then, I found it. The scarecrow. It wasn't standing where I'd seen it before. It was closer, much closer. The flashlight landed on its face. Rough burlap, 2 charcoal black eyes, a thin, crooked mouth. During the day, the shadow of its hat had hidden its face. Now, it was staring directly at my window, directly at me. I wanted to believe it was the wind, bad lighting, anything. I lowered the flashlight. Immediately, the rustling returned, not from the field, from directly beneath my window, fast, urgent, like something dragging itself toward the house. I threw the flashlight back up. The sound stopped instantly. The scarecrow hadn't moved, or at least, that's what I wanted to believe. because something had changed. Its arms, they no longer stretched straight out. Now they hung slightly lower, like the relaxed arms of a person. I never turned the flashlight off again that night. I just sat there watching it, waiting for sunrise, because deep down, I already knew. If I looked away, it would get closer. I don't think I slept that night. Not really. Every few minutes I'd glance back toward the window. The Scarecrow never moved, not while I was looking. Eventually the sky began to brighten. The darkness faded, birds started singing, and everything looked normal. I rushed to the window. The Scarecrow was back where I'd first seen it, deep in the middle of the field, exactly where it had been the evening before. For a moment I laughed at myself. Maybe exhaustion had finally caught up with me. Maybe grief was doing strange things to my mind. That explanation lasted about an hour. I spent the morning cleaning out my father's study. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. Tax papers, old farm equipment manuals, receipts, bills, nothing unusual. Then I opened the bottom drawer of his desk. There was a small notebook with a black cover and worn edges. It looked completely ordinary, until I opened it. The first half contained farming notes, rainfall, crop yields, equipment repairs. Then the handwriting changed. The letters became larger, shakier, almost frantic. The first entry read, August 20th. The Scarecrow wasn't there yesterday. I frowned and turned the page. August 24th. Every morning, it returns to the same place. Every night, it gets closer. A chill ran through me. I turned another page. August 28th. I learned not to turn off the light. Then the next 3 pages contained only one sentence, written over and over and over again. As long as you keep watching it, it doesn't move. As long as you keep watching it, it doesn't move. As long as you keep watching it, it doesn't move. The pressure from the pen had nearly torn through the paper. By the time I closed the notebook, my hands were shaking. I kept telling myself there had to be a rational explanation. My father had been alone for years. Loneliness changes people. Maybe dementia, maybe stress, maybe grief, anything, except what I was beginning to believe. That afternoon, our neighbor stopped by, Mr. Cooper. He'd lived down the road for as long as I could remember. He brought over a casserole, offered his condolences, and asked how long I planned to stay. After a few minutes, I finally asked him, Mr. Cooper, did my dad ever put up a scarecrow? He stopped eating. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. What scarecrow? The one in the field. He slowly turned toward the window. I watched his face carefully. The moment he saw it, every bit of color disappeared. He didn't answer. He just stared. Finally, he spoke so quietly I almost couldn't hear him. Pack your things. What? Leave before dark. I forced a nervous laugh. It's just a scarecrow. No. His voice was sharper now. It isn't. The room fell silent. I searched his face, waiting for him to smile, to admit he was joking. He never did. Instead, he stood up. Your father started falling asleep while staring at that field. At first, I thought he was losing his mind. Then one day, he told me the house smelled like burlap. Mr. Cooper swallowed hard. I should have taken him seriously. He walked toward the front door. I followed him outside. Mr. Cooper, what is that thing? He climbed into his truck. His hands were trembling on the steering wheel. Then he looked at me for only a second. If you hear someone calling your name tonight, don't answer. He slammed the door, started the engine, and drove away faster than I'd ever seen anyone leave that property. By sunset, the weather changed. Dark clouds rolled across the sky. The wind picked up. Within minutes, rain hammered the roof, while lightning flashed every few seconds. The entire farmhouse shook with each crack of thunder. I locked every door, closed every curtain, turned on every light in the house. Then I sat in the kitchen and started reading my father's notebook again. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped I'd find something, anything, that would explain all of this. Instead, the lights went out. Everything disappeared. The refrigerator stopped humming. The clock went silent. The house felt dead. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam barely filled the kitchen. Then I heard it. A slow, wet scraping sound. Right outside the back door, something was dragging itself across the porch. Closer, closer, until it stopped. Right outside the glass. Every instinct told me not to move, but somehow I still walked toward the door. Rain covered the glass so completely that I couldn't see outside. I stopped only inches away, then lightning lit up the entire yard. For a split second, I saw everything. The porch, the rain, and the Scarecrow, standing directly outside the door, less than 10 feet away. Its head was tilted. Its charcoal mouth looked longer than before, almost like it was smiling. Then the lightning vanished. Darkness rushed back. I immediately aimed my flashlight at the door. Nothing. The porch was empty. Only rain, only darkness. I stood there trying to convince myself I had imagined it. Then I heard something above me. A slow, heavy creak. From upstairs. My bedroom. Something was walking across the floor. I didn't wait to find out what was upstairs. I grabbed my keys, ran out the front door, and didn't stop driving until I reached the only motel in town. The woman behind the front desk looked up the moment I walked inside. She studied my face for a few seconds before quietly asking, "You came from the Wilson farm, didn't you?" I couldn't even answer. I just nodded. She slowly slid the room key across the counter, but before I could take it, she wrapped her hand around my wrist. Her fingers were freezing cold. "If you hear your father's voice tonight," she whispered, "don't answer." I stared at her. "What did you say?" She didn't repeat herself. She simply let go of my hand and looked away. I barely slept that night. Every little sound outside my motel room kept waking me up. Cars passing by, wind brushing against the window, footsteps somewhere in the hallway. Every single time, I thought it was something else. Morning finally came. The storm was gone. Sunlight poured through the curtains, and for the first time since arriving, everything felt almost normal again. I convinced myself I had overreacted. Maybe grief really was affecting me. Maybe the notebook, Mr. Cooper, the storm, all of it had pushed my imagination too far, so I decided to go back. Just long enough to grab the rest of my things, then I would leave forever. The farmhouse looked peaceful when I arrived, almost beautiful. Birds moved over the fields, and the wind passed gently through the corn. Nothing seemed out of place. The Scarecrow was back where it had always been, standing in the middle of the field, exactly where I had first seen it. As if the previous night had never happened. I almost laughed. Until I walked into my father's bedroom. While clearing paperwork from behind his desk, my hand brushed against something hidden underneath. An old Polaroid. The edges had turned yellow with age. I picked it up and flipped it over. There was my father, my mother, and me. I couldn't have been older than 3. We were standing in front of the farmhouse, smiling. Then I noticed the background, the cornfield, and standing behind us was the Scarecrow, the exact same brown coat, the exact same black hat, the exact same posture. My stomach dropped. The photograph had to be more than 20 years old. That Scarecrow should not have existed back then. I turned the picture over. My father's handwriting covered the back. "This isn't a scarecrow. It's a nest. It waits. When it finally chooses someone, it follows them home." I read that last sentence 3 times, each time hoping I had misunderstood it. I hadn't. Then I heard it. A loud crash. Upstairs. Something heavy had fallen. For several seconds I couldn't move. Every instinct told me to leave. Get in my truck, drive away, never come back. Instead, I walked toward the staircase. Even now, I don't know why. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe I wanted to know my father hadn't simply lost his mind. Maybe I already knew the answer. The upstairs hallway was silent. Too silent. My bedroom door stood half open. I was sure I had closed it. I pushed it open slowly. The room had been torn apart. Drawers hung open. Clothes covered the floor. An old wooden storage box had fallen from the closet shelf, its contents scattered everywhere. Most of them belonged to my father. Old shirts, a broken wristwatch, family photographs. Then I saw it. A brown coat folded neatly inside the box. I froze. It looked identical to the coat the Scarecrow was wearing outside. I turned toward the window. The Scarecrow was still standing in the field, still wearing that same brown coat. My heart started pounding. I looked back at the coat inside the box, then back toward the field. One coat, then the other. It made no sense. With shaking hands, I picked it up. Something slipped from the pocket. A folded piece of paper. Another note. My father's handwriting. Only 2 sentences. If you see it in the field, go inside. I frowned. The second sentence was written underneath. If you see it inside the house, run into the field. I stared at those words, trying to understand them. Then behind me I heard a slow wooden creak. The closet door opening by itself. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My entire body locked in place. Another creak followed, longer this time. Then came a dry rustling sound, like corn stalks rubbing together, inside the closet. I slowly looked over my shoulder. The darkness inside the closet looked deeper than it should have. Then something pushed through the hanging clothes. Dry corn stalks, dozens of them. They slowly forced the clothes apart. And behind them, I saw a face. Rough burlap. 2 black charcoal eyes. A crooked charcoal smile. It wasn't standing inside the closet. It was growing out of it, watching me, waiting. I don't remember screaming. I only remember running. I bolted through the bedroom door and nearly fell down the stairs. My father's note echoed in my head. If you see it inside the house, run into the field. I didn't stop to think. I didn't question why. I threw open the back door and ran straight into the corn. The corn swallowed me almost immediately. Within a few steps, the farmhouse disappeared. Then the sky disappeared. Everything became walls of dry stalks. I couldn't tell which direction I was running anymore. The leaves sliced across my arms and face, and every breath burned. Then behind me, I heard it, rustling, fast, getting closer. I ran harder, and the sound sped up with me. Then I stopped. Instantly, the rustling stopped too. The silence was worse. I could hear my own heartbeat, nothing else. Slowly, I pulled out my phone. 5%. That was all the battery I had left. I switched on the flashlight, and the narrow beam cut through the rows of corn. Then I saw it, the Scarecrow, standing in the middle of the path, only a few yards away. Its arms were no longer stretched outward. They hung naturally at its sides. Like a man, I remembered my father's notebook. As long as you keep watching it, it doesn't move. I didn't dare look away. I took one slow step backward, then another. My eyes never left its face. The phone trembled in my hand. Then I blinked just once. It was closer. I froze. I took another step backward. Then I blinked again. Closer. 8 yards. 5, 3. It never walked. I never saw it move. It simply wasn't where it had been before. Now I could see every stitch in the burlap, every crack in the dried fabric. Then I noticed something impossible. The charcoal mouth was changing. The corners slowly curved upward. It was smiling. My phone vibrated. Low battery. The screen went black. Only for a second. But in that second, something breathed beside me. I smelled cheap aftershave. My father's aftershave. The screen lit up again. The Scarecrow was inches from my face. Something hung around its neck. A wristwatch. My father's watch. Without thinking, I grabbed the burlap and pulled. I wish I hadn't. There wasn't a face underneath. No eyes, no skin, no skull. Only tangled cornstalks twisted together like muscles. Small white bones were woven between them, like teeth. There wasn't a person inside. There never had been. The flashlight died. Complete darkness. Then right beside my ear, I heard my father's voice, soft, almost comforting. "You have such a beautiful face, son." I ran. I don't know how long. I don't know which direction. I only remember sunlight. I I stumbled out of the corn, covered in cuts and barely able to breathe. The farmhouse stood ahead of me, silent, waiting. I only needed one thing, my truck keys. They were still inside. I told myself it would take 30 seconds. Go in, grab the keys, leave forever. I unlocked the kitchen door. The keys were exactly where I'd left them, on the table. I grabbed them. Then behind me the back door closed, slowly, without a sound. I turned around. The Scarecrow stood in the corner of the kitchen, but something was different. The old brown coat was gone. Now it wore my father's grey shirt, the one he always wore around the farm. His old hat rested on the burlap head. Someone, or something, had even drawn a thick grey moustache across its face with charcoal. It looked almost like him. It didn't move. It didn't need to. It simply tilted its head, watching me, waiting. I backed toward the front door, never taking my eyes off it. The moment I reached the porch, I ran. I sold the farm the following week for almost nothing. I didn't care. I just wanted it gone. Months later, I heard nobody stayed there. Workers quit. Survey crews refused to return. Eventually, the property was abandoned. I never asked why. Some questions should never be answered. 2 years passed. I started over. New city, new apartment, 12th floor, no cornfields, no farms, no scarecrows. Little by little, I convinced myself it was over. Then last week, I found an envelope outside my apartment door. No stamp, no address, no name. Inside was a freshly developed Polaroid. It showed the old farmhouse, the cornfield, and 2 scarecrows. One wore my father's grey shirt. The other made my blood run cold. It was wearing the blue sweater I was wearing that very moment. I turned the photograph over. One sentence was written on the back in handwriting I didn't recognize. "You're not watching anymore." I haven't slept since. Every light in my apartment stays on. Every night. This morning, I looked out my window. A little boy across the street was staring upward. Not at me. Above me. Toward the roof. Slowly, I stepped closer to the glass. I couldn't see the roof from my window, but I could see its reflection in the windows of the building across the street. Someone was standing on the edge, arms stretched wide, perfectly still. The wind picked up, and each time it blew, the blue sweater moved slightly, just enough to remind me it wasn't made of straw anymore.